The Hegemony of Blame and Fault in the Intergenerational Transmission of Pacific Languages, a paper presented by Judy Taligalu McFall-McCaffery, which is myself, and John McCaffrey. Kia ora, malo elelei, talofalava, and warm Pacific greetings to you.
Yeah, talofalava, malo elelei, and greetings to everyone. Ngā mihi nui o te wā, kia tātou katoa ko hiuhui mai nei I tēnei rā.
I am the Pacific Librarian at the University of Auckland, and born and raised in Samoa, and I did my undergraduate studies in Fiji. I lived in Tonga for over 20 years, and then came here and did postgraduate studies. I am also involved in a lot of research and presentations and work on bilingualism and languages in the Pacific. And my work at the university involves Pacific Academic Information Literacy curriculum integration that builds on students' language, culture, and identity. And that's a short something about myself.
So I'm originally of Irish ancestry, and my ancestors came here looking for to make a contribution towards a better world, and so consequently they've been always very supportive of building those kind of relationships. I've worked in Māori and Pacific settings in the Pacific and here, and together with Judy and the parent and grandparent of children of Samoan, Tongan, Cook Island, Italian and Irish heritages.
And for us, looking at our children and our grandchildren in Aotearoa, New Zealand, with the languages, the various languages that they can have access to is really important.
Yeah, and all the things that we're talking about and everyone's talking about with intergenerational transmission apply to our kids and our grandchildren, that's for sure. The challenges are there.
So this is a vision for Pacific students and families as citizens of New Zealand that we have adapted from Mason Drury's 2001 work on Māori education strategy.
And so obviously we're looking for a criteria for success that's much broader just than a narrow definition of academic success. We want our children and grandchildren to experience success in all of these domains. So the main thing about the meanings in this presentation is we're using the term heritage languages rather than perhaps L1 or L2, because both of those languages are actually heritage languages for our kids. So the presentation overview. So we are really concerned that intergenerational transmission of all of the languages is seriously at risk due to the lack of recognition and status in the public domain and educational domains, which are largely controlled by people and agencies outside the control of the family. But however, the new coalition government and its policies perhaps offers ways forward. So Judy?
And this is really important, that in spite of all the work that others and ourselves have done on the rejuvenation and the maintenance of our Pacific languages, that this conscientization, the thinking that we're not conscious, that we have unconsciously taken on these ideologies and beliefs and internalized it into our own thinking, and therefore we have come to believe that we ourselves are to blame for the loss of our languages, that that we are not, we are not speaking it at home and in in our churches or even in the public arena, that we ourselves are to blame for this loss of our languages.
So it's the blame and fault ideology that overrides everything else.
Yeah, that's correct. So here are some questions that our paper raises for discussion.
And we won't read them all. We'll just leave you to have a quick flick through those. But the consequences of these hegemonic policies and processes can be seen in the census data that emerges each time there is one. And since this 2013 data, the trends will have shown greater losses since then. And you can see, just for comparison with Māori, that 3 of the Pacific languages are under the possibility really of intergenerational transmission. At those levels, it's not possible for parents to speak their own language to their children at home without assistance from the state, and particularly immersion, early childhood and bilingual education. And the 2 other languages, Samoan and Tongan, are really verging on being in real difficulties. So Hill concludes in the latest Garcia encyclopedia that these statistics paint a bleak picture. So we want to really ask ourselves, how do we get into that situation, and how are we going to get out of it? So our work in seeking an explanation really takes that position from Foucault, who looked at the role of the unconscious system of ideas, which he calls discourses, which come to dominate other ways of thinking, suppress research, and the position of other languages. So these discourses of English only dominate discourses of the possibility that Pacific languages might have some value, and this English discourse becomes an unquestioned ideology.
And so we have internalized this these ideologies, or this discourse becomes our discourse, and it becomes the norm, and so it suppresses the possibility of giving value to our own languages outside of the home, outside of our family, outside of our churches.
And so the processes by which that works, Foucault talks about this surveillance becoming unconscious. And so really, I guess, Judy, we see from our research that people are not actually aware that there were any other possibilities other than the natural, normal way, which was English only outside the home and for school and education and work.
And so we're unconsciously always policing ourselves and surveilling ourselves and saying that, this is our fault, this is...
And transmitting these views to our children and grandchildren, which are really disempowering colonial discourses. So we see that this position we're in comes from this long-term historical situation since the 1800s in the Pacific, and you can see how that has come down, and it just
and it's deeply
embedded and overrides research and logic and common sense and evidence in policies, and that's the challenge. And the real worry is probably that hegemony has become indistinguishable from the culture of society, and becomes part of cultural reproduction. So therefore, people are unable to distinguish between Fa Samoa, Whakatonga, or what is the culture of our communities, and what is a hegemony that's been taken on board. So raising children in English and encouraging them to speak English only then has far greater rewards and values in the minds of many of the parents in the research that we've been taking part in.
For even like myself, growing up in Samoa, we were told, and I was told, that I had to speak English in school and even at home, and there was no other message given to us at the time. And I'm still hearing those messages now, that there's no such thing as bilingual education, that you can have English and your own heritage language together in school and be successful, just as successful in education, with having both English and your own heritage language.
So it's really important that parents and communities don't come to blame themselves, but they come to understand the circumstances that have led to them having these particular sets of beliefs. Well, most people don't even know that it's a belief. They think it's just the way the world is.
Yes, it's the norm.
So one of the questions we ask in the research is, are there families anywhere that can resist the power of this? And the answer is, by and large, it appears to be a universal movement of hegemony when minorities interact with majority powerful world languages, except, of course, for Māori, who have developed strategies as Indigenous peoples to challenge these particular unconscious discourses. So the general emerging pattern that seems to be a worry is that our children seem more likely to grow up and raise their own children in the languages that they went to school in, rather than the languages of their peers, rather than the languages that their parents spoke to them at home. So even if the parents spoke the languages at home, the hegemony of the teenage years and the peer group is far more dominant than what happens at home. And when the language is seen as something for home and church and family, but not for work or school or the civic domain, of course the young people don't see it as having any relevance to their lives. So we now have a whole generation of adults of childbearing ages who can't speak the languages, and so therefore they can't pass them on anyway, even if they were able to do so.
And it's not, of course, being helped by these unhelpful internalized devaluing hegemonic advice that has been handed down by successive governments, and even our academics, the professionals, reported by the media, even by our church leaders and our communities themselves, about our Pacific languages, and that it has no value, or low to no value in education, in getting a good job and being successful. There's no social and economic value or contribute to society. So this course, to speak it at home and not in the public domain, does not help at all. And these are some of the examples that actually says that and tells us that we are the ones who can maintain and rejuvenate our languages ourselves. And it is ourselves that is the problem, not the policies or the hegemonic ideology that has been passed down.
Right, so can anything be done about that? Well, let's just say that over the last 20 or so years, the Pacific groups and organisations have been doing a great deal, and this section just lists some of those to try and sort of use conscientization to overcome those hegemonic ideologies. But without policy and support of the civic domain, the progress has been successful and should be celebrated, and we've made many gains, but we are losing the battle. So,
but at the same time, we have to be cautious that our own principles of, Pacific respect and deference to authority in public are not used to justify that continuing power and control over our own interests and aspirations.
Right. So the second set of measures, as well as the conscientisation, is promoting the value of the languages and the cultures in the civic national domain, and May's report sets out what needs to happen there. And of course there is a hope that the new coalition will be able to address that. So for us as a Pacific family, Judy?
Yes, this will only happen if we have a set of goals to be achieved in the years ahead. And these are the goals that we outlined at the beginning of the presentation: to enjoy success in education as Pacifica, Tongan, Niue, Samoan, Cook Island peoples, to grow up in New Zealand as New Zealand citizens in the context of our own languages, cultures, values, and beliefs, to be able to live life as Pacifica.
And to gain the skills, knowledge, and understandings to be productive citizens and enjoy the material benefits of the wider society. So bilingual students are, in fact,
blessed with bilingual brains. Me taki whawhataitele. Thank you for being here today. And so we're here for your questions and discussion.
Yep, Malo Pito. We look forward to talking with you and hearing more from you.